And we are back for preseason week 3. Welcome, guys. My name is DK, and in this video, I'm going to break down the 2-game NFL DFS slate. I also make content for NBA, WNBA, and player props. Underdog, they are the sponsor of today's video. If you guys are interested in player props, I'd highly recommend Underdog. They do have preseason props, but having a lot of success over there. But also all the different sports they offer are up top. So basically everything you can offer. They do best ball stuff as well. So would highly recommend it. You can use the link down below for $250 deposit match bonus or the code DKDFS. And if you guys look for more content, you can check my Patreon. That is linked in the description. Doing props as well as DFS. It's been an insane month, and let's see if we can keep it going. As far as recap from Sunday goes, did not cash for DFS. It's kind of an ugly slate. Josh Dobbs is the highest scoring quarterback, and he played less than a quarter. That really tilts me because I had his under his passing yards. So that was a little bit frustrating, but had a huge day yesterday for WNBA. Swept my props. I got first place, won $2,500 for DFS. So yeah, August has really been a movie, and let's see if we can keep it going for this Thursday 2-game NFL slate. All right, so also did tweet out all the data for these 2 games over on Twitter, so go ahead, check this out. We'll be talking about this in the video as well. Let's go position by position since we only have 2 games. A little bit easier, I think, to talk about it that way. Okay, so for the Colts, we know the starters are going to play into the second quarter. So there's a couple quotes. One of the quotes was into the second quarter. One was roughly a quarter and a half. So, you know, you're going to get at least a quarter for Anthony Richardson, probably a drive or 2 in the second quarter, I guess, you know, depending on how well they do offensively. But I think that makes Anthony Richardson one of the best quarterback plays on this slate, right? We know how mobile he is. About a quarter and a half of Anthony Richardson, I think, makes him the best, if not one of the best quarterback plays on the slate. And then with 4 other quarterbacks on this roster, I think it's really hard to get to anyone else. So it's basically Anthony Richardson for me, and that's it. Now for Cincinnati, we know that Joe Burrow and the starters will not be playing this game. Jake Browning is still banged up. So that leaves Logan Woodside and Rocky Lombardi. Now if we take a look at the snaps last week for Cincinnati, it was about a 70-30 split, I believe. 73% for Logan Woodside, 27% for Rocky Lombardi. My expectation is a similar split. I would say at least a half for Woodside, maybe a little bit more. Don't think Rocky Lombardi is going to make this team, so I think he's just kind of going to play mop-up duty. But I think Woodside also one of the top quarterback plays. Now, the downside of Logan Woodside is he's just not that good, not very mobile. But I think of all the quarterbacks on the slate, he's probably the one that you can expect the most playing time from. All right, moving on to Chicago. So we already know that the starters are, Williams and a majority of the starters will not suit up. So that leaves 3 quarterbacks there with Bagent, Rippon, and Reed. No real standouts here. My expectation is a somewhat even split. I think that the back-end guys probably have the upside to play a little bit more, like Brett Rippon and Reed. But just like tournament dart throws, nothing to feel great about there. And then finally, Kansas City. So we know that the starters will not play, and other starters unlikely to play for Kansas City. So that leaves 3 quarterbacks on the roster here for Kansas City. Hold on, give me one sec. Sorry. So we got Wentz, Aludakon, and Ian Book. We haven't got like clarity on exactly how much they're going to play. So, one of these Chiefs quarterbacks could be viable. We know Book is somewhat mobile. But right now, like I said, I think the top quarterback plays are going to be Richardson and then Logan Woodside. But maybe Kansas City, maybe they don't play Wentz too. And then things become a little bit more interesting here for Kansas City. Let's move on to running back. Okay. So running back, we know that Trey Sermon is going to be out. So for the Colts last week, let's go over to running back. Let me bring up this. So last week, they only played 4 running backs. It was Xavier Scott that played the most. He played 39% of the snaps, ran 15 routes, and had 11 carries. However, it's a little bit of a different situation for this game, right? Because we know the starters are going to play into the second quarter, which I think makes Jonathan Taylor a pretty good running back play. We know how talented Jonathan Taylor is, and if you're going to give him over a quarter, I think that makes him a really solid running back play. Next up behind Taylor, probably Goodson and Evan Hall. Then you'll probably get mop-up duty for Scott and Felton. So I think of the Colts running backs, probably Taylor is my favorite, but still a little bit interested in Goodson and Hall as well. But yeah, I think JT is the guy. Now for Cincinnati, this is probably my favorite team to target, just in general for playing time. So again, we know the starters are not expected to play here for Cincinnati. So we only saw 3 running backs play last week, and I would assume that's the case again this week. So I don't think we'll see Moss or Brown, which that leaves just Travion Williams, Noah Cain, and Elijah Collins to man the backfield. Relatively even split, but 37% for Williams and Collins, 26% for Cain. 8 carries for Cain, 8 carries for Collins, 6 carries for Williams, 13 routes for both Collins and Travion Williams. But if we're just talking about playing time, I think that the Bengals are the team that you can expect the most playing time from these running backs. So I like all 3. I think, ownership's going to play a role in what I do here with these Cincinnati backs. So if I have a feeling that the field's going to be pretty heavy on one, I think that I'll lean the other 2 because I think all 3 look pretty similar. So yeah, Travion Williams, Cain, and Elijah Collins, I think 3 of the better running back plays on the slate. Now for Chicago, so again, we know the starters are not expected to play here. So I think you can rule out DeAndre Swift. Now Khalil Herbert did play, has played when they ruled out the starters. So I would expect like him and Roschon Johnson to kind of get the early work here for Chicago. And then rounding it out with Homer and Ian Wheeler. So my expectation for the Chicago Bears is that we'll see 4 running backs. Again, Blossom Game is only a fullback, so doubt he gets any carries, which doesn't make anyone really stand out. I mean, I think that all 4 are playable here in Herbert, Johnson, Homer, and Wheeler. If you take a look at the snaps last week for Chicago, you saw only 3 running backs play. That was Wheeler, Homer, and Herbert. It was Homer that played the most, 33% of the snaps, Herbert 27%, and then Wheeler 16%. Yeah, so I think that if we do see 4 running backs play, no real strong leans. If Roschon Johnson sits again, I think he'll play, but we'll keep an eye on it. If Roschon Johnson sits again, he didn't play last week, then things become a little bit different. Then I would say the Chicago running backs are almost identical to the Cincinnati backs since there'll only be 3. But right now I'm assuming that Roschon plays, but we'll monitor the situation there. And then finally for Kansas City. So Kansas City, they ran a lot of running backs. Played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 running backs. Again, we're not expecting these starters to play. So I think we rule out Pacheco, probably CEH. But still leaves 5 running backs. So I think if I'm going to play a running back, it probably would be one of the younger guys. That'd be Carson Steele or Deneric Prince. Steele 31% of the snaps. Prince 36% of the snaps. I think those 2 would probably be the targets here for Kansas City. All right, moving on to wide receiver. So wide receiver for the Colts. Again, starters, like I said, expected to play about a quarter and a half. We know that Josh Downs is banged up. A couple of the guys have been banged up as well. So keep an eye on actives and inactives, like Ashton Doolin a little bit banged up as well. But I think Michael Pittman's firmly in play, right? I think if you take a look at the depth chart here for the Colts, I think Pittman, I think the rookie Donnie Mitchell's fine. I think those starters are in play here for, a quarter and a half. So, definitely has some interest in the main guys for the Colts. But if you take a look at last week, they sat like all their main guys and was relatively spread out. There was a couple guys that played a good amount. Laquan Treadwell played 60% of the snaps, 7 targets, 7 catches. I think once the starters are done, he'll probably have a lot of opportunities. Greg Ward played 49% of the snaps. DJ Montgomery, I should say, 39% of the snaps. So starters definitely interesting, but some of the back end guys are interesting as well. I think Treadwell, Montgomery, Ward, those guys probably get the most opportunities once the starters are done. Now talking about Cincinnati. So Cincinnati, I'm expecting them to be very, very shorthanded, right? So looking at last week, they only played 5 wide receivers, right? So you didn't see any of the main guys, right? You didn't see Jamar Chase. You didn't see Higgins. You didn't see Yusovas. You didn't see Irwin. Burton also, Burton played only 23% of the snaps, right? So if you take a look here, let me bring up, I think it's probably easier to bring up the depth chart, right? So, again, not expecting Chase, Higgins, Yusovas, Trent Irwin to play. Jermaine Burton only played a little bit. Charlie Jones was banged up and did not play last week. Now, could he play in this game? Yeah, I think you could see some Charlie Jones, but wouldn't expect like a ton. I think he would get similar to kind of Jermaine Burton if he plays, of like probably the early work and then get shut down. But That leaves only a few guys here on the back end. Also, Kendrick Pryor missed last week with an injury. So, I mean, looking at the snaps last week, Cole Burgess, 71% of snaps, 28 routes. Shedrick Jackson, 69% of snaps, 29 routes. Lassiter, 89% of the snaps, 34 routes. So, yeah, I think those three, Lassiter, Jackson, Burgess, all look really good here. Again, expecting a lot of work for these Bengals receivers. Again, if Charlie Jones plays, I think he'll play similar to Jermaine Burton of, maybe about a quarter of the game. But another, again, team that we're expected to be pretty shorthanded here. Okay, let's move on to Chicago. So, again, starters not expected to play in this game. So take a look at the depth chart here for Chicago. I don't think we expect to see DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, or Romeo Dunze. I doubt we see a ton of Tyler Scott. Velus Jones has been... he's been playing mainly at running back, so I don't think we'll see much of him at wide receiver. And then DeAndre Carter and Colin Johnson have also been banged up. So, you're getting to a pretty thin room if those guys are out as well. Again, Carter, Johnson on the depth chart as well. Like, they could be really thin. It could be a situation where it's like a little bit of Tyler Scott, and then you got, Dante Pettis, Freddie Swain, Webster, John Jackson. Like, They could be extremely shorthanded here. Maybe Velus Jones will actually have to play some at wide receiver. Maybe Tyler Scott will just have to play a little bit more. But, we'll keep an eye on the status there of DeAndre Carter and Colin Johnson, because if they're both out here too, this could be just as thin as the Bengals at wide receiver, right? And then finally, Kansas City. So taking a look at, if you look at the Bears too last week, so 57% of snaps for Webster, 45% for Tyler Scott, 31% for Freddie Swain. But again, we're ruling out a lot of these main guys, which will make this room a little bit thinner. Now take a look at the Chiefs. So the Chiefs played a lot of receivers last week, but again, I think we can safely assume that the top guys probably won't play. So I think that group will probably be Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson. I think that group probably does not play. Now, could Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney get looped into that group? Maybe. But even so, they still do have a good amount of receivers on this depth chart. So actives and actives will be pretty important if we do get them before lock, because they could have upwards of 10 receivers depending on who exactly plays. But looking at last week, it was Justin Ross that played the most. He played 49% of snaps. So it's second-year guy. He ran 20 routes. Other than that, though, it's pretty spread out. Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy had productive days in limited snaps. But again, we're not expecting to see them. So, again, we'll keep an eye on the actives and actives. But right now for the Chiefs, I think Justin Ross probably your best bet. And I would be mainly looking to the back-end wide receivers if I'm going to target anyone in Kansas City. Okay, finally, tight end. So let's just go shift over to tight end here. If you guys do enjoy all this data, again, it takes a lot of manual work to make these charts. Make sure to go give it a like on Twitter. Would greatly appreciate that. Okay. So for the Colts last week, we saw 5 tight ends play. We saw Jelani Woods get banged up. He is out. Ogletree, 14% snaps. Jordan Murray, 39% snaps. Mallory, 24%. Eric Tomlinson, surprisingly, played the most, 39% snaps. He's more of a blocker. But you're going to see some starters here. You're going to see Granson. You're going to see Mo Alley-Cox. No real standouts here at tight end for the Colts. Like I said, I think you'll see Granson and Mallory early with some Mo Alley-Cox. And then kind of Ogletree, Murray, Tomlinson to end the game. So 6 tight ends, not a lot that I love here. Now for Cincinnati, a little bit of a different story. And this really tilted me. I was one day early on this. So week 1, I had a really good lineup. I won 2,000 in preseason week 1 slate. And I played Eric All over Tanner Hudson. Tanner Hudson was a massive chalk, and Eric All was unowned. Eric All played 1 snap, or he barely played week 1. And then, of course, week 2 comes out, plays 56% of the snaps, and runs 20 routes. That was so tilting. Why couldn't that happen in week 1? We only saw 4 tight ends play, right? With Hudson, All, McLaughlin, and Grandy. We already know that starters are not going to play here for Cincinnati. So I think Gesicki, Drew Sample get ruled out there. So that leaves just the 4, right? And I think it's Hudson and Eric All. Hudson's super productive, right? We know he's a very good pass catcher. And Eric All, the rookie, I think will have opportunities. So I think those 2 tight ends are pretty solid tight end plays here for Cincinnati. All right, moving on to Chicago. So Like I said, Chicago starters, not expected to play. So I think we rule out Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett. Mercedes Lewis is literally 50 years old. So we're not expecting him to play, which leaves not that many tight ends here, right? So again, we're not expecting to see Kmet or Gerald Everett. So that leaves what? Sweeney, Bates, and Carlson. I think all three look solid. Sweeney played 43% of snaps, Bates 35%, Carlson 22%. Yeah, I think all three of those guys are in play. I'm expecting only 3 tight ends to play here for the Bears. So yeah, Carlson, Sweeney, Bates, I think all solid tight end plays. And then finally, tight end for Kansas City. So again, with starters not expected to play, I think that probably Noah Gray gets grouped into the starters there. So that leaves Wiley, Irv Smith, Coop, and Spivey. Irv Smith could also get grouped into the starters as well. We'll see. But yeah, I think that Wiley's interesting, rookie tight end. I think if I'm going to play one of these tight ends for Kansas City, he's probably the guy. I think he probably gets the most work. Now, take a look at the snaps last week. So he played 32% of the snaps, 31% of the snaps for Irv Smith, 22% for Travis Kelce, 22% for Noah Gray. Like I said, I think Gray, Kelce, maybe even Irv Smith don't play in this game. If that's the case, then I think Wiley will have opportunities to play a lot here and could be a pretty solid tight end play. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up the video. If you guys are looking for more content, again, a lot more in-depth stuff over on my Patreon. We do player pool, we do live stream, we do Discord access, in-depth roster construction videos, kind of a little bit more talking cash games, tournaments, all that good stuff. That's all over my Patreon, as well as props as well. We had an insane run for props and looking to keep it going for week 3. So thanks again for watching, guys. Good luck, and we'll see you all in the next one.